Kai was once seen as the embodiment of every young person's dream, a kid from the Bronx who made it big in Hollywood with nothing but his own determination. He was the face of the new internet era, embodying spontaneity, humor, and energy. For millions, he wasn't just a streamer, he was a friend on the screen. Now every move he makes is watched, every word is dissected, and every mistake is amplified until there's no room left to breathe. What happened to this world? How did someone so beloved become the target of mass hatred? Over the past 2 years, Kai has been caught in a series of controversies that have shaped a larger narrative, the Union Square riot that paralyzed New York City, the streamer university drama, which was accused of manipulation, and the robot video that made millions question the moral boundaries of digital entertainment. All of it was recorded, shared, and debated millions of times, a social experiment no one planned, revealing how the public can worship and destroy a person in the same space. This video will take you through Kai's journey from the beginning, how he built his career from scratch, how the same laughter turned into pressure, and how the online world creates both heroes and villains within a single person. We'll witness the fame, the mistakes, and the hatred, all unfolding in front of the camera without pause. Before he was in the spotlight, before his name filled the headlines week after week, Kai Cenat was just a teenager from the Bronx living in a small apartment with dreams too big for the space. Amid the sound of sirens and the rough city streets, he grew up holding on to one simple belief: if you can make people laugh, you can make them forget the cruelty of the world, if only for a moment. Kai started with a borrowed camera, a shaky internet connection, and endless energy. He had no manager or production team, just instinct, imagination, and a kind of naive self-belief. He recorded pranks, reactions, and laughter raw and unplanned, and somehow people felt close to him. There was something real about him, something rare in a digital world built on pretense. The year 2020 was a turning point. When the pandemic forced the world to stay home, Kai lit up a new kind of stage. Every night, millions watched him from their own rooms. His streams weren't just entertainment. They were an escape from loneliness, from anxiety, from the silence that lasted too long. Kai brought explosive energy, but behind the shouting was a gentler desire to make people feel alive again. He laughed without hesitation, danced without shame, and interacted with his viewers as if they were old friends. There was no distance between him and his viewers. That was his power. In a world full of digital masks, Kai gave us something rare: spontaneity. The world fell in love with him for it. In just 2 years, he rose from small-time streamer to Twitch legend. He broke records with over 300,000 live viewers, surpassing names that were once considered untouchable. But it wasn't just the numbers that made him special, it was the feeling. He made everyone believe that they could make it too. He became the symbol of a generation that rejected the old ways, a generation that believed charisma and courage could break the system. For a while, the world truly believed in him. But fame always comes with a price. Like a light that shines too brightly, it began to blind those who stared too long. While everyone was cheering him on, a small shadow began to grow behind him: ego, pressure, and an entertainment world that started demanding more than he could give. At that time, Kai didn't yet know that the world he had conquered would soon turn against him. After conquering Twitch, Kai Cenat became the symbol of something far bigger than himself. He wasn't just an entertainer. He was the face of fun, a young man bringing joy to a world that felt increasingly bleak. Everyone loved him, big brands came knocking, top celebrities wanted to appear on his streams, and the digital entertainment world turned him into a mascot, an icon of kindness, spontaneity, and positivity. But behind the laughter constantly displayed on screen, a quiet shift was happening. The realization that kindness can become a burden when it has to be performed every single day. Kai knew that every time he pressed the live button, millions of eyes were waiting for him to make the world feel lighter. People came not just to watch, but to escape. And that's when the pressure began to grow, because how can anyone stay funny, happy, and on all the time? In the digital world, there's no space for silence. When the camera turns off, expectations stay on. Everyone wants Kai to remain the person they fell in love with, always kind, always cheerful, always real. But on the internet, real rarely means authentic. More often, it means becoming the most interesting version of yourself, even when you're falling apart inside. Behind the screen, he began to lose his balance. He streamed for 10 hours a day and slept only a few hours. He tried to hold onto an energy that was slowly consuming him. Some of his close friends said, Kai has to face his one that lives in front of the camera and another that sinks behind it. The bigger his name became, the thinner the line between those two selves. He started building an empire in the streaming world, combining influence, celebrity connections, and an incredibly loyal fan base. But as with every empire, the higher it rises, the stronger the wind that blows against it. Major brands began shaping his image. Every post, reaction, and word had to be carefully calculated. One small mistake could turn into a PR disaster. Be yourself, people around him would say. But the business world never truly wants the real you. They want the safe, profitable, sellable version. Kai found himself trapped between two worlds, between the freedom he once fought for and the image he now had to protect. The more he smiled for the camera, the more lost he became behind it. Sometimes he looked empty, like someone struggling to remember why he started all this in the first place. Every LOL in the chat felt like hollow applause. Every donation notification was a reminder that his life had become a show. The internet has one cruel habit. It loves you when you rise, but waits patiently to tear you down the moment you slip. They called Kai the king of the internet generation, but maybe no one ever asked what it feels like to be a king in a world without mercy. At the peak of his fame, Kai began to change. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. He had to become something bigger than himself, an icon of kindness culture, which was ironically starting to suffocate him. Kai's smile had always been part of his charm. His laughter, once so genuine and contagious, slowly began to change. It became louder and quicker, as if he were trying to hide something he didn't want anyone to see. Amid the flood of chats and constant notifications, there was a loneliness he could no longer hide. It grew between thousands of laughing emojis and millions of viewers who greeted him without ever truly knowing him. Then, one by one, incidents began to unfold. Some of his on-stream remarks sparked controversy. Clips that once drew laughter now fueled anger and debate across social media. People began to question who Kai Cenat really was. Was he just an entertainer who crossed the line? Or was he a product of a culture that devours young people too quickly, then leaves them alone under the spotlight? Every negative comment became a thorn in his side. When you live in a world that judges you every second, those tiny thorns can turn into deep wounds. The year 2023 was when everything began to fall apart. What he had planned as an act of kindness, a giveaway in New York, turned into chaos. Thousands of people flooded Union Square. The crowd spiraled out of control, the police intervened, and Kai was briefly detained for questioning. What was meant to be an act of kindness turned into a headline. Kai Cenat causes riot. The media, which had once praised him, now began to tear him apart. He was no longer a symbol of joy, but an example of an influencer who lost control. For the first time, Kai looked genuinely confused because his good intentions had been twisted into proof that he was too powerful, too reckless, and too big to be managed. After that incident, his mental strain became more visible. His streams were still crowded, but the atmosphere had changed. The energy that once felt spontaneous now seemed forced. Every joke felt stiff and every laugh seemed rehearsed, performed just to please the audience. Kai began to look tired, not just physically, but spiritually. The digital world leaves no room for rest. He knew that if he stopped, even for a moment, the algorithm would forget him. The very system that had once lifted him up was now slowly consuming him. The greatest irony was that Kai was criticized for the very thing that had once made people love him: his spontaneity. If he laughed too loudly, people said he was fake. When he got angry, they said he was toxic. When he stayed quiet, they said he'd lost his touch. He lived inside a paradox. He could never win. The world demanded authenticity yet punished every trace of imperfection. Amid it all, Kai became a victim of something he helped create: a culture of instant entertainment where happiness is sold by the hour and human emotion is converted into engagement. Several times, he tried to speak up. He wanted to talk about the stress, the pressure, and the feeling of being unappreciated. But on the internet, honesty is often mistaken for drama. When he cried, people laughed. When he stayed silent, they called him arrogant. And so, the small cracks finally split wide open. It wasn't because of one major mistake, but rather the tiny wounds that had built up over the years. These wounds never had a chance to heal because he had to keep performing. Every star has a moment when applause turns into a weapon. The love of the audience that once lifted you up suddenly becomes a current strong enough to pull you under. For Kai Cenat, that moment came without warning. He didn't lose his popularity. If anything, it grew. His name kept trending. But this time, not because of laughter or wild antics, but because of controversy. Because of accusations, because of public anger hungry for redemption from the very figure they once created. The internet has a strange way of punishing people not with weapons, but with opinions. Every new opinion feels like another blow that never stops coming. Kai was swept into a storm of gossip, scandal, and misunderstanding. Some of it was exaggerated, but in the digital world, perception is stronger than truth. One clipped video can rewrite a person's reputation. One poorly timed comment can burn away years of credibility. Kai, the king of laughter, had become the easiest target in a world that once bowed down before him. After the storm, his expression changed in several of his live streams. Instead of wild, warm energy, he displayed restrained anger and frustration wrapped in humor. He started clapping back at commenters, mocking his haters and questioning the loyalty of his fans. What was once a safe space now felt like a battlefield. His chat was no longer a place for shared laughter, but an arena where he was constantly put on trial, sentence by sentence. That's where the tragedy lies. Kai didn't just lose his good image. He lost the one place where he could truly be himself. The media didn't help either. Article after article spoke of the downfall of Kai Cenat and the transformation of the most beloved streamer into the most hated one. Meanwhile, social media analysts began labeling the phenomenon the burnout loop, a pattern in which public figures who rise too fast eventually collapse under impossible expectations. Kai was just the latest example of the same system, a system that turns humans into content machines. When those machines start to overheat, the world watches them burn while applauding. In one of his interviews, Kai spoke softly. Sometimes it feels like people don't want you to grow. They just want you to stay the person they fell in love with. It was a simple sentence, but it cut deep. Behind all the laughter and fame was a far deeper loss, the loss of the freedom to change, to make mistakes, and to simply be human. He was no longer Kai from the Bronx, the kid who just wanted to make people laugh. He was Kai Cenat, a global brand, and his life was no longer his own. When everything seemed to crumble, the world did the cruelest thing it could. It moved on without looking back. The timeline kept scrolling, and the trending topics changed while Kai tried to understand how someone could be hated only because they were once loved too much. His nights grew quieter, the view counts dropped, but the comments cut deeper. Amidst it all, he began to talk about something rarely heard in the world of entertainment: the fear of losing himself. Kai was merely a mirror reflecting the culture we've created. It's a culture that equates attention with affection, virality with value, and engagement with meaning. We watch someone laugh until they're exhausted and call it entertainment. We watch them fall and call it karma. We forget that behind usernames and followers are humans who are tired, confused, and breakable. Kai once said he only wanted to make people happy, simple. But that simplicity drowned in a system that measures everything in numbers, views, donations, subscribers, and likes. It all seems tangible, yet none of it can measure true happiness. When he started to lose his way, we stood at a distance and judged him, as if his downfall were just another form of entertainment. Perhaps the greatest irony of the digital age is that in a world that connects everyone, it has become easier than ever to leave each other behind. Kai's story isn't just the tragedy of a streamer. It's a reflection of a world that is slowly losing its empathy. We crave instant access to everything, happiness, intimacy, and even someone else's suffering. We want to see people succeed, but we also want to witness their downfall because, behind the screen, seeing another person collapse gives us a strange sense of comfort, a whisper that maybe our lives aren't so bad after all. But what if we pause for a moment and ask ourselves, who created this monster called cancel culture? Who demanded perfection from people who were never meant to be perfect? We all did. Every comment, like, and share is fuel for an endless, directionless machine. Kai is just one of many trapped inside it.